Hello everybody, I'm BK from Think Theory, and in this video I'm going to be discussing about another core concept that is noted in ABRSM Grade 6 to 8 Theory question 4 and question 5. As usual, as I said before, this video is going to be part of a series where I explain all of the concepts that you need to know for the ABRSM Grade 6 to 8 Theory test. So let's get started with the next concept for question 4 and question 5, which is going to be musical terms. Now here's what the musical terms question are going to look like on the day of the exam. Basically, the question would ask you for a specific foreign term or sign in the piece or orchestral piece, and they will ask you to define it in your own words. For example, they might ask you, okay, what is incalzando? You may reply, oh, jokingly, or something like that, right? Now, there are two types of questions the exam paper of ABRSM will give you in the same format of musical terms. The first 50% of musical terms questions are going to be terms that were tested from ABRSM's grade 1 to 5, right? So for those ABRSM grade 6 to 8 takers, you might need to re-study your ABRSM grade 1 to 5 terms because they're going to be 100% asked in those musical terms questions, okay? Especially your Italian, French, and German terms, you definitely need to revise them on your own. Now, the second type of question is going to be on orchestral terms. So they are basically new terms that you test takers have to study before the exam. But I mean, you already studied like your grade 1 to grade 5 terms, so it's going to be a piece of cake for you. So some examples of orchestral terms that are going to be on the exam are going to be something like okay, define the phone, his, arco, whatever this costing is for brass players. They are also going to ask you these kind of questions. So the two types of questions they're going to ask you are from terms from grades 1 to grades 5, and then orchestral terms that you kind of need to self-study yourself before the exam date. And in this video, I'm going to give you this other 50% of these orchestral terms, okay? So that you don't have to worry looking in the textbook hoping to get a distinction, okay? So let's talk about the orchestral terms. So the orchestral terms in ABRSM's grade 6 to 8 are divided among the 4 instrument families: the string family, the woodwind family, the brass family, and the percussion family. Now for the string family, as you can see here, there are a lot that you need to know, and then all of these terms might probably make up your musical term question during the exam. So it's important that you have to know this. I'm going to explain each briefly, and then if you can see here these asterisks, they are very important and they might appear on the ABRSM's grade 6 to 8 exam. So you gotta know that, okay? So let's talk about the strings first, okay? The other 50%. So if you see this upside down U-shaped sign, it means that the string player has to do a down play. If you see a V shape on the score, it means that the violinist or string player has to use the up bow. And then you have these mediums or crotchets with these marks here. Some people will assume them to be tremolo, but that's actually half correct. The real meaning of these lines and these mediums is to signify the amount of notes we need to play. So for example, we have, let's say, a medium right here, and we have one stress here. That indicates the string player that they must play 4 fills. Actually, this does not really apply to string players, but it's more towards the orchestral family. So these two you definitely have to know. These all are applied to the whole orchestral family. So basically, if you see one slash, that means play 4 quavers, or if you see these 2 slashes, it means you play 6 to 8 quavers. But it really depends on the note value for each type of. If you want, I can do a separate video on these tremolos if you're feeling confused. Then we have some of the tones that you need to memorize here: con solino, which is with the mute; senza solino, which is without the mute. So you know, string instruments, they often have to play with the mute. If you're playing piano, it's the same thing as the una coda pedal, right? Sometimes violins also have to play the mute. So these terms are definitely going to be really important. Una coda, I don't think will be tested a lot on the exam. So una coda means to use the first string. It's different from una coda of the piano, where you have to press the pedal. It's really. Then we have the two most commonly tested terms, arco and pizzicato. Arco means that you bow the string, just like you do in a normal violin, and pizzicato means that you pluck the string. So violinists when they take the bow and they pluck the strings, or if you see violinists or any type, this is what this term means. Then we have some other frequent terms that are tested. We have div or divisive, which basically means to separate into two or more parts. So sometimes in an orchestra, you have the string family, it's very big. So sometimes what the composer will do is they will add this div right here, and they'll often do two parts of instrument in their scores. So basically what this means is that one side of the string family plays this part of the score, and then another side of the family will play this part of the score. Right? So for example, we'll do something like this, right? I can say right here. The composer might have, let's say, C and E. This upstem and downstem, they'll put this. So that means one part of the string family will play the E part, and one part of the string family will play C. Okay. I hope that clears everything up. It's very confusing to explain. Then unisi means to play back together. So basically that separation that happened with div, unisi does the opposite. Now it's asking all the instruments to play the notes one by one. Okay. Then we have some specific violin techniques that I want to put on there. Some of them are definitely tested, like co-legno for example, but some of them I don't think are not tested. So co-legno means that the string player has to play with the wood. Sul ponticello means that the string player needs to play near the bridge. Tremolo is different than this tremolo. Okay, this tremolo means to quiver the bow, and then spiccato is the last one to use the bounce. Now of course these are the most commonly tested terms that I've seen throughout my ABRSM grade 6 to 8 theory experience. If you have more to add, please add in the comments, it will be helpful. Okay, so now moving on to the other instruments. There isn't really a bulk of musical terms that you have to memorize, but they are frequently done in the exam, so you have to memorize. So let's talk about the woodwinds. Woodwinds, I have to reiterate div because it's definitely another part of the exam. Div basically means to separate, right? So this is also another term in the exam. Then we also have A2, which is a super important term in the exam, which has the same function as unis, right? Unison, which is to play together. Okay. Now, why do they use A2 instead of unis for woodwinds? This is because woodwind instruments often have different parts. So you have flute 1, flute 2, oboe 1, oboe 2, bassoon 1, bassoon 2, etc., etc. So often in the score, composers use different melodies, different harmonies for each instrument. So as a result, if the composer wanted each of the instruments to play together, they would use A2. Okay? This is just the reasoning behind it, but you have to know this. Okay? A2 for all of this. Next is the brass, and we have this plus sign, which frequently occurs in every brass instrument. It's also really important to memorize for the exam. This basically means that it's a stop note. Okay? Basically, what this plus sign does is it basically stops the note of the plus player. You see, let's say you have a French horn player, you play whatever note that is, and then the French horn player will stop the note by placing the hand in the valve of the brass. So this basically has the same function as the mute concertino on the violin or string for other string instruments. But I suggest this writing style note to make the examiners think it's different and has a variety of things. Then there's another instrument called the harp. Now, the harp typically is part of the string family, but sometimes it's treated like an outsider. So the only important term which I suggest knowing for harp is this. This basically means glissando. Okay? Glissando basically means, in terms of the harp, is you're basically going from one note to the other note by just strumming it. It's the same thing as like glissando in the piano when you want to go from C to C. Same thing for the harp as well. Okay? Then last but not least, actually not the last, but another key instrument that you need to know is percussion. And what the ABRSM exam people like to do is ask questions about the timpani most often. Okay? Sometimes they may ask questions on like the cymbals or triangles or whatever, but most frequently they'll give a question based on the timpani. And the only term they like to ask for this instrument, timpani, is the trill and the tremolo. Now this is different than the tremolo you see in the strings. These two signs basically mean that a timpani roll is occurring. Okay, a timpani roll. The timpani roll is a specific technique used by percussionists, especially timpanists, where they want to create this quivering sound by alternating the temperatures. So if you've seen like Strauss's alto strats, also whatever the rhapsody is, the alto strats that are throughout, right? You could see the timpanist, do this kind of motion. That's basically what the timpani roll is. It's basically a motion done by alternating two of the drumsticks. So this is actually a frequent term that the ABRSM exam people will ask. Additionally, they will also ask this, okay? Let's say they give you the timpani roll, or they mention a specific bar of the timpani roll. What does the timpanist do at this bar? So they'll probably ask you this, and you just have to write by alternating the drumsticks, something like this. Then the last one I'll probably might add is the piano. Now, of course, this is a rare instrument in the orchestra, so it will not be frequently asked in question 4 and 5, but just in case, I'll answer, okay? First of all, you have this Leo, which means pedal. I hope you pianists know what this is, right? It means the pedal. And this asterisk, meaning that you have to stop the pedal, I guess, lift the pedal up. So I hope you know what that is. And then you have uno coda, which means to use the mute pedal, the left pedal, the keys. So that's basically what uno coda means. And I think that's kind of it for the piano. But in case they ask questions related to the piano in questions 4 or 5, you definitely take notes. Okay? So yeah, these are basically the other 50% that you need to memorize whilst memorizing your ABRSM grades 1 to 5. Once you have a firm grasp on this and practice it throughout your past year papers, you should be fine for this musical terms question. Okay, so what I often like to do at the end of each video is give a PDF on some practice for ABRSM's grade 6 to 8 based on the concept that I teach in my videos. But since today's concept is about musical terms, I actually wanted to do a multiple choice practice for you test takers out there, because I just feel like making 3 PDFs of scores are kind of intimidating to do, especially since you know like half of the music terms from grade 1 to grade 5. So I have 6 questions written here up on the board. You can pause the video if you like and answer these on your own. If you get all of the questions correct, then there's a 100% chance of you answering this musical terms question correctly on the exam, or you just know these terms only and you don't know the others, so you get these terms correctly on the exam. So anyway, this is basically a practice for you to make sure you're ready for the exam. Okay? So you can pause the video if you want. I'll review the answers in a short while. Okay, you're done? Alright, let's see which questions you got correct. So the first question asks us what fair lump sum is, right? So just by using your grade 1 to grade 5 terms, you know it's going to be V, very slow. Lump sum in German terms means slow, and Sir means is an additional word for very. So the answer for this first question is very slow. Next you have the still, and I wrote timpani for an important fact. The answer to this question would be D, alternating drumsticks, because as I told you before, the trill for the timpani and the trill for any other instrument in the orchestra is completely different. This is called timpani roll, which is basically alternating. Now, brillante, for the common man, you might answer B, but the answer is actually A. It's a really advanced grade 5 term that you kind of need to know for the grade 8 exam, but whatever it is, if you got this wrong, it's not going to be brilliant. Brillante means virtuosic. If you got this correct, good job. Okay, here, I suppose you got right. The answer to this is actually stop note. Some of you might have placed mute. This actually serves the same purpose as a mute, but sometimes writing stop note will actually have the difference between the mute definition and etc. So you might get a point on stop note rather than mute. Okay. The length is a French term. It means slow. Okay. Now some of you might be tempted to choose A rather than getting slower. That is retinue. So it's important that you know the difference in differences. And this one I never mentioned earlier, but this is important for piano. This basically means to play one octave higher, 8 right? I think you've seen this in your instrument, so I won't really consider this to be a music term that you have to know, but as I did one paper just during my grade 6 to 8 years, this octave. So if you know what this means, you're good. So if you got 6 out of 6, or even 5 out of 6, 4 out of 6, you're fine for the exam. If you got 1 out of 6, or even none of them correct, you're not prepared. So please make it your duty to memorize these terms before you take your exam. And as usual, thank you for watching this video. I hope you found something interesting and something new in this video. And all the best for your ABRSM Grades 6 to 8 exams happening on your exam date. And as usual, please like and subscribe if you want to see the next episode to this video series. All the best. Hope you have a great day.